The reason why it has to be represent all type of gender is because our approach is really on gender partnership, which is we believe it's men, women, and people of all gender identities working together in partnership to create collective culture change, because we cannot achieve progress with one set of people.
Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Caprino, and welcome to my podcast, Finding Brave. I've created this show for everyone who longs to create something bold and brave in their life, to rise up, speak up, and stand up for who they are, and to reach their highest and biggest visions. Each week, I'll be speaking with inspiring guests from all walks of business, leadership, entertainment, the creative arts, and the entrepreneurial world. And they'll be sharing their intimate stories of finding brave and offer their best strategies for building your most rewarding, joyful, and meaningful life, business, and career. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Finding Brave. You're in for an amazing one today, folks. I hope you feel it is amazing every time you hear it. But we are so blessed to be speaking with Ludo Gabriele today. Ludo, I have been following your work for years, and even I featured you once back in 21 in my Forbes blog. Did I even have this podcast? Yes. I should have had you on a lot sooner, but and we have a Forbes interview coming out. This is reaching you all in February, and we're doing this in November. But I just want to tell you, I so appreciate the work that you do, the brave work that you do, and it is so needed. And I just thank you for taking the time to come here and talk with us. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for the kind words. Those are really appreciated, because this is not easy work, for sure.
Oh, it isn't. And what work are we talking about, people? We're talking about how masculine norms shape leadership norms and why that can and often lead to inequity. So, Ludo, let me tell you all about the work that Ludo does. But we were talking about how the work I do, I'm immersed in women's issues. And because I was a former therapist and a former corporate person, I do believe I can glimpse at what men experience, but my world is what women experience. And you are a little bit of the opposite, although you shared with me that in your amazing work, you're also surrounded by women too. So what a lens you have. But without further ado, let me tell you about Ludo. Ludo is the Senior Director of MARC Branding. MARC represents men advocating real change at Catalyst, one of my most favorite, most powerful organizations, a global nonprofit that works to accelerate progress for women through workplace inclusion. The MARC initiative is designed to inspire and equip men to leverage their unique opportunity and responsibility to be advocates for equity. Ludo is also the founder of Woke Daddy, an amazing platform where he shares his thoughts about fatherhood, masculinity, and society at large. Check that out, people. Before joining Catalyst, he worked for over 10 years in international marketing and branding, in an advertising agency, and as an entrepreneur, and holds a master's degree in management from the ESMA Management School in Paris. I don't know what that school is.
It's a school in the suburbs of Paris. It's not an amazing school, but it did pay for it was free, because the French system is built just differently. So
in Paris.
Just for this, I'm grateful. Yes.
So amazing, so international. All right, Ludo, let us dig in here. But I do want to share, you all fill out a guest prep sheet, and my guests let me know what are the takeaways they want to make sure we hit home. And I just want to read these because I think they're amazing. Number one, no meaningful progress can be achieved on anything without involving the majority. I mean, look at what we're seeing in our world even today. Today is election day for the midterms. I voted. It was amazing. But that statement is so true. Number two, barriers preventing men to engage in DEI. We're going to talk about what those are, because I think we often don't know. We know that things aren't moving, but we, and again, my world happens to be women in terms of who I support. I think we don't have the empathy for what men go through that
We
keep
don't know
them.
what we don't know, for
We
sure.
don't know what we don't know. And number 3 is steps to prevent sexism and create more inclusive cultures. So let us start with the title of this, masculine norms, Ludo. What are those? And spell it out for us. And also, why does that go against creating equity and inclusion and, diversity in our organizations? Tell us everything.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to discuss today, for the opportunity to share about this issue, which is, as you said, sorely needed, timely, and evergreen, as we were talking before.
We were.
When we talk about masculine norms, it's really what we think about traditional masculine norms, right? What we collectively agree on what it means to be a man. And what we know, and I think we are kind of desensitized to this fact, is that it's very narrow. It's very dominant, being aggressive, being at a winner take all kind of approach to what it means to be a man. It is also has, it holds a lot of imbalance in terms of relationship across genders, because historically we know that women have been also socialize themselves to see themselves as inferior as men, right? We were talking about patriarchy a little bit before, Katsi. So this idea of this over glorification of traditional masculine norms, well, led to the word that we have today, which is hyper competitive, which is driven on competition over aggression. Those are attributes that we have valued a long time within our organizations, and in the way also organizations compete with one another, right? When we talk about the market, we are not approaching the market as a collaborative place. We are approaching the market as we're going to be the best so that we can beat everyone else, So they translate, right? Those masculine norms shape the way a lot of organizations are still run, a lot of countries are still run, a lot of institutions are still run. And this is the result of socialization. And that's where the root of that issue needs to be addressed. And unfortunately, when we are in places such as myself, when we address those issues from a workplace perspective, we get caught in, or we get asked many times to provide a checklist, and we are not looking at the root causes of those issues, which is socialization, which is how we are all socialized to value each other, and how organizations and countries are run as a result. So that's,
well, what you just said is, volumes of books, and this would be, a 100-year course. But I do want to say something and dig into this a little bit, if I could. I want to punctuate 2 things. We will link to it below, but I interviewed your dear friend and collaborator and colleague, Mark Green, on man box culture. And I told you, Ludo, I literally cried on, you'll see it, go to YouTube. Because I am so, tuned into the ways in which women are told, don't be a braggart. Don't act like you think you're great. Don't ever put yourself in front of other people. Don't act too assertive. It's the flip. And we are so damaged by it. It's just an example is honest to goodness, Ludo, every single day I'm talking to a high level woman who says, I'm talking founders of pharmaceutical companies and, high level. And they say, one woman yesterday said, I don't know how to ask for what I want without looking disagreeable. There it is. So I know my world, but when Mark was talking about what men deal with, and I'm just going to say it here based on a lot of research of like pre-K, 5-year-olds, you ask a boy what it is to be a boy. Don't be a pussy, excuse me for using that word. No, don't be weak. Don't be friends with girls. Don't ever cry. Don't be vulnerable. They know at age 5. Am I right?
Yes, that starts in pre-K, and that socialization process is something that is built and reinforced and passed down, but not only at school, right? It's, as we were saying, it's, Mark always give that list of people that we interact with depending on our culture, our pastors, our preachers, our coaches,
our teachers,
the TV that you watch, and everything is reinforcing that. And that's, and it is true that, what you were mentioning about girls having the other side of the coin, which is you're being policed by being assertive. I would tell you, Katie, though, I would say that masculine norms are arguably even stricter. And we hear what I mean, but what I mean by that.
Tell us.
So we know that we have a long way to go as it comes to gender equity, for sure. But we know, we can see how the path for women is aspirational, right? And that's and the messaging that is, communicated as such for girls, you can do anything, you're strong. You see it everywhere, right? And that's clear. When you're a boy, though, the message is not that simple anymore.
Now?
Well, that's what I'm saying. We don't know what it is. We don't know what it is because we are coming from a place where we're kind of blindly reciting a script of masculinity, and for the first time we are questioning it. So it's a generational questioning that will take generational time for change, right? But when we are at that juncture, I mean, look around, you can still see that alpha male attributes are still largely glorified, by myself included.
What are glorified? Masculine?
Alpha male attribute, of course,
yeah, take a look. I mean, everywhere.
What I'm saying is it's uncharted territories. It's really not easy. Men also receive a lot of mixed messages, when we are taught to, in one way we are taught, we know that we cannot, that emotional stoicism hurt us. I mean, on mental health, it's been proven. There's a lot of data around that. At the same time, we know that men who are perceived as more collaborative and power sharing, especially in the workplace, are perceived as less competent by both men and women. You know what I mean?
I do.
So this is not a binary issue.
Is that true still? The research shows. So in our Forbes interview, you talk about men who advocate for women and point out the inequity are seen as less competent, but not just by men.
By women as well. The one that are more collaborative and more power sharing, meaning a man that would not act like what you would think as a individualistic career person would, like that doesn't fit that norm, will be perceived as less competent just because he doesn't embrace that. And that's also part of the story which needs to be told on the men's side, which is men, as you know, experience masculine anxiety in the workplace. I don't know if you want to touch on that now, but that's a huge
masculine
topic.
Anxiety.
Yes. 94% of men, based on Catalyst research, experience masculine anxiety in the workplace. So we define this as kind of the stress that men feel when they have the feeling that they do not fulfill society expectation of what it means to be a man, and the consequences on this, aside from the anxiety itself, which is a mental health symptom, is also they are less likely to interact sexism in the workplace. So if your environment is likely to be hyper-combative or kind of, in that side of the spectrum, because not all cultures are the same, you're much less likely to interrupt the sexist, interaction or sexist occurrence in the workplace.
Let me rephrase, because I need to understand you, and you're going fast. Men who have this anxiety, and there's confusion within that, causing anxiety and fear, I'm guessing. That's the former therapist in me. What do I know? But if they're going through that, which is an angst, it's an existential angst, who am I, right? Are going to be less likely to interrupt
Sexism in the
sexism
workplace.
when they see it, where they see it? And is that because they're already struggling with identity?
Of
And if they
course.
put themselves out there in that way, they're probably afraid they're going to be perceived, pushed into a corner of a negative judgment. Is that it?
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. Masculine norms are much more narrow because if we are all experiencing it at some level, it also shows that the workplace, the way it's set up, doesn't necessarily work for men either, you know?
Can I
Um,
ask you this, Ludo? Because this is
yes,
what I don't understand. Well, there's so much I don't understand. You said how we perceive women, and it all comes. Wait, I have to say this. One of the challenges with anything regarding workplace, workforce, work is that it's about us as people. So if we're trying to shift something up here, but we haven't done the deep work, forget
yes,
it.
yes.
And this is, I'm not a
That's
therapist
real.
anymore,
Yes,
but my career coaching is often career therapy without, when I know someone's functioning is deeply impacted, I immediately refer them to a therapist. I don't do therapy anymore, but it's all with a therapeutic lens.
yes,
So one problem, people, is you can't just fix it niggling around up here. It's deep, right? But
yes,
here's something I'd love you to tell me based on your work and the research. It's taken us since the 70s for and front runners like Gloria Steinem, and boy,
yes.
there's a whole controversy over feminism, that term.
Hmm.
And boy, I've been called some things I can't and even ever say out loud. Shut up, you dumb C word,
Hmm.
for what I said I believe feminism is. But the point is, since the 70s, we've been fighting for getting out of our female box.
Yes.
Now it's more recent for men, but why do you think it's so much more intractable for men? Why? I mean, because we live in a patriarchal world. It's been, under 10% of Forbes, what am I saying? Fortune 500 organizations are run by women. So yes, the patriarchal world is heavily cemented. But why in particular do you think this is so hard to stretch out of? Whereas
Well,
women have been doing it.
it's a good question. I mean, I think it's also because when you're in a place of privilege, why you move? You see the difference? So that's where I believe it stems from. However, but
Wait,
that's
let me understand. Privilege in like, we know what privilege means, but the average life of a man who is, in a mid to high level position in an organization, how do they see privilege? How do they conceive of it?
well, first of all, they need to have, as you were saying before, this is an individual experience, so they need to question
I mean, how
who.
are they benefiting? In their minds, are they outwardly thinking, I'm going to get this
Well,
job and she isn't?
that's the thing, though. It is privilege is very often.
Unconscious.
I mean,
Un
it's invisible for to those who have it. For certainly if they have not questioned it, because equity is going to feel like oppression for someone that has been privileged is his whole life, right? So I think that lens is very important, but it's not easy to acknowledge privilege because privilege, everybody has it at in some level, but it is not framed as such, and unfortunately, you
and not
also.
everyone has it. You mean a certain group have it.
I said everyone has some level of privilege. What I mean by that is you, Cathy, or me. I'm a straight white able-bodied man, so I have a lot of privilege, right? I struggle with mental health and things like that. You don't see that, but in appearance, I have a lot of privileges. Other people are going to have different
Right.
advantages. I come from a very, very humble economical background, so I didn't have. So that's very,
I
very
see.
different, and that's where also this conversation becomes complicated because sometimes you have a lot of men that becomes defensive because when they hear the word privilege, they hear I am privileged, meaning you are not seeing, you don't know what I've been through, you think everything has been easy, and the fact that we are not also socialized to share about those things, it reinforced that resentment that you can find with men,
Do
which
you
is
think it's, I'm sorry, go ahead. I
no,
didn't want to
please.
cut. Do you think it's, what came to my mind is when Black Lives Matter came
Yes.
out to the forefront, what you heard is no, well, white lives matter too. Of course, white lives matter, but they have mattered more than Black Lives Matter for centuries. But is it exactly what you're talking about, that when you feel unappreciated, underserved, whether you're white, black,
Mm-hmm.
you know, when you feel you're not part of privilege, then you, I'm guessing, people, you'll let me know if I'm way off, it's not going to come as a happy message to you that another group that perceived itself to be underprivileged is going to get attention.
No, I mean, I think
Am I
you're
right
putting the
here?
finger, yeah, you're putting the finger on something that is critical, which is people tend to think, especially when they are suffering, what about me,
What about
right?
me? Right.
And unfortunately, especially as it comes to men, you have the narrative, which is a true narrative, which is men are challenged like never before in history. I think it's fair to say that. I think it's a good thing. You can say that men are under a unprecedented amount of scrutiny and accountability, and at the same time,
Difficult.
they are still being asked to remain in a very narrow set of norms in a lot of areas of their lives. And when they step out of it, they are also being questioned and punished by doing things that they've been told to do for generations.
Yeah.
And when they step out of it, they get policed by men for stepping out of it, and they get policed by others because anything too little, too late, you're performative, you're whatever it is, you should
And
have been
also,
canceled.
I will say this, and I mentioned it with Mark, just a brief illustrious story. I'm a feminist, and I have been for years, but and I was married to a wonderful guy. We're amicably divorced now. And he was a feminist in that you can do what I can do here. And I remember when gas, you had to pump it yourself. It turned from full service. And I don't know, what was I, 35? And I said to Arthur, my husband at the time, I don't know how to do that. Will you come with me to the pump? He said, Kathy. Yeah, so I must have been 40. He said, you have a master's degree. I'm not coming to the pump.
Yeah.
You read the directions and you pick it up and you do it. And I was like, jeepers. But what I want to say is my father, who died at 93, 10 years ago, did everything for my mother. Mm-hmm. So the additional challenges. So I'm thinking, my father would have helped me.
Yes.
So then there's what you consciously think you believe. And then this stuff comes up. Do you understand what I'm getting at?
Of course, of course.
So I think men are policed by men and women,
yes,
who either outwardly accept equality or inwardly, but inwardly do not.
Of course.
Does that make sense?
Of course, and it's exactly what you described with the memory of your dad and the way it shaped you and how it shaped the interaction you had and the expectation you had. I mean, it's gender stereotype 1-on-1, right? I think it's also because historically right now we are in a critical time where we are questioning it, not from only what you were saying before. The first wave of feminism was about women being able to do anything. So that's one thing, but it was never really questioned within the lens of true inclusion, right? What does that mean? Because men were not even remotely part of that conversation for a long time. And I think that's really the Me Too movement in my view that kind of put a catalyst on it and kind of put a critical mass of visibility so people could more openly talk about it.
So when you say men weren't in the discussion, weren't discussions happening at the dinner table 10 million times a day. Like, listen, a woman saying to her husband, or, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of any number of things you can imagine, right? Weren't they being discussed openly with the men in our lives?
I mean, I would argue that a lot of it could not be discussed that way because the world was different. Like I would,
Yeah.
if you think about just how, in terms of legislation, women get the right to vote very late. Also, the fact that they've been able to also have full control of their own body gave them really access to the workplace. So just that, just biological control, right? So I think those were not questioned also maybe in that fashion because there was those biological barriers plus the legislation that was just so much that was just, completely, the system was clearly, against women. When when the workplace started to open up, essentially, which is how Catalyst was created, which is really with the
How
intent.
Catalyst was created?
Yeah, 1962 was created really by and that's the mission of Catalyst, which is really building inclusive workplaces that work for women, with the argument that workplaces that work for women work for anyone, and that at that time it was really giving opportunities for women to work, to not have to choose between being a caregiver and a breadwinner, to have some level of independence. And that's 1962, Kenzie. We're not talking about a long time ago, right? So right before, it was not about a glass ceiling, it was about a locked door, or a door that didn't even exist. So I think that's why when those things started to be possible, then yes, women were challenging men more on a day-to-day basis, I would say, because those opportunities were open.
I understand. It was somehow a little, I don't even want to say safer. For many it wasn't, but I understand. Oh, thank you for explaining all this. So we know what these masculine norms are. Unfortunately, we understand that human beings don't change too quickly. And this is a societal paradigm that many people do not want to change. I mean, the people calling me terrible things. And it's interesting, that feminism article and video, we'll link to it, people, is still one of the most popular things. And I have 35 million views on Forbes. One of the most viewed things today, because I think people don't understand. But given the barriers we have, that for men, and I get it, internally they're going to think, wait a minute, how is this working for me? And socially, societally, culturally, we're not really 100% on board. What do we do, Ludo? How do you go in and train? It's pretty clear. I mean, if I'm sexist, tell me. But men are going to listen to you more than they're going to listen to me about it, because I'm not living that reality, that gender reality. And I think for women, often when we're talking about the struggles women have, there's a shortcut when I come in to talk about it versus someone else. So you're training men. What goes on in these trainings and these conversations?
Yeah, thank you for it's actually not necessarily a training. You say it's really, we call them learning programs, and they are usually conversation based, as you just pointed out. So actually, a lot of people are asking us if our programs are for men exclusively. So the MARC initiative.
Do they want them to be?
Well, we do not do 100% program 100% towards men, and the reason is that we believe that it is important, but it is in majority for men. So 70% of our audiences are men, and 30% remaining is all gender identities. And the reason is that we want to invite people in conversation. It's also very important that people hear each other's experiences, to hear voices that are not necessarily heard in the room, especially when those sessions. So we have different types of sessions. So we have sessions that are like just company based. So they are the employees will be just for, it will be for one organization only. Or we have also sessions that are like cross organizations. So you would have people from different organizations joining in. And what we found is that the hearing, there is just a powerful element of hearing your woman colleague talking about a sexist instance in the workplace, about something that happened yesterday or something that happened across the hall from them, right? It's differently. We have a few, and that is just, I believe this is why our program are also very successful. It's because we are not necessarily, we are trying to equip men with the skills to be more effective gender partners. So we are not training them. We are not training them to, we are not giving them a set of solutions. We are trying to help them ask themselves the right questions, which is not necessarily the easiest thing, but it's a different mindset. It's a different way of seeing situation. And the reason why it has to be represent all type of gender is because our approach is really on gender partnership, which is, we believe it's men, women, and people of all gender identities working together in partnership to create collective culture change, because we cannot achieve progress with one set of people. Everyone
Can
needs
I
to be
ask you
involved.
this? And again, I'm asking you what I want to know. Hope this is interesting, people. I feel like I'm just alone with you here. What's interesting to me is a lot of my programs are for women only. And the reason is, this is the God's honest truth. You invite one man in, the energy is different. Women aren't as safe to share. I see it over and over. Now, a lot of my free stuff, a lot of my private coaching is so inviting and inclusive for men. And men have said, write a book for me. And The Most Powerful You, my latest book, it's the 7 damaging power gaps. They impact 98% of women, but they impact 90% of men based on my survey. So it is written for you, people, but it's got a lens for women. So here's my question to you. And my work is different in that I'm helping a certain demographic, mid to high level professional women or women of any level, claim their power, claim their confidence, overcome what they know or don't even know is holding them back from what they really want. So your stuff is different. But do you find that when you happen to be in a group of all men, there's a safer feeling of sharing?
Not necessarily.
Wow.
I would tell you this. I found that men tend to be vulnerable more easily with women than they are with
So
men.
different.
Because it's very difficult to say to another man, I need help, I don't know, I am unsure. And that's actually it's actually very sad, That's what creates the epidemic of loneliness that men go through. That's why men kill themselves so much more. So I think that's what we need to actually do more with men. There is this analogy, I don't know, it's not from me, so don't quote me on this, but there's this great analogy that I've heard right around COVID, because a lot of people were isolated and things like that. And they were saying that men in general, when the world is open and whatever, they have side by side activities. So, we watch a game, we watch something, we play, but we don't have a face to face. We never have face to face interactions, right? We have a beer, so we have, we bond, but it's very surface level and it's very shoulder to shoulder, right? And that goes to show that we need more of that. But I think there is also power of seeing the vulnerability of men. Having women seeing that is also very important, because
Having women be
see also how the experiences of men can be complicated and difficult. One of the main issue I see in that conversation is that we tend to compare people experiences instead of honoring each of them individually. What I was saying before, the what about me, right? And for men, it's even greater, I would say, is that because we know that there is this privileged position, right? So
wow.
how can you express how can you express distress when the world is basically telling you you have everything, right?
It's
So
like,
it's not that.
you hear a celebrity with millions in the bank and they're complaining. They have mental health issues. It's hard. And I hear people going, oh, yeah, it's so hard for you, brother. You've got a mansion. I'm like,
Anthony
do you hear
Bourdain
what this person
took
is
his
saying?
own life. He had the best
Who did?
job in the world, in my view.
Who did?
Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, I know.
Can you imagine Anthony Bourdain? If a man like this, I mean, he had demon. Everybody does, I guess. But if a man like this, with that level of, does something like that, it speaks volume, right?
So true. So I need to say one more thing, and then I have a few more questions if you can hang on with me. After I spoke with MARC, something huge occurred to me, and maybe it's incredibly obvious to everyone, but here it is. Tell me what you think.
Yes.
So I was my father's, my parents had 2 girls, and I think I was the boy that my father wanted, although he never said it and he never let it on. But I was a little more boyish. I was number 1 on the tennis team. I was competitive. I was outspoken, and I would watch sports with Dad. And my sister would a little bit, but I was that. And I love watching sports, and I have a boy and a girl, 25 and 28. My son, Elliot, I love sports, and he was a sports kid, and we saw a lot of games together. But it occurred to me that, the cliche is there's the guy sitting around watching football and the woman's making the nachos in the, whatever. I mean, it's such a cliche, and I know
Yes.
women love sports like I do. But it occurred to me that sports give men a way to be connected.
It is so true.
Is this true? How did I not know this before?
In so many levels. So it's actually one of the reasons I had this realization, a few powerful one around that as well. And it was actually through talking to MARC. So that's funny that you just mentioned.
Crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, think about it. Sports is the one place where we let our emotions
You
out.
can cry when your
Exactly.
team loses.
You can hug each other. And my son, so I have an 11-year-old boy and I have a 5-year-old daughter. So we are a soccer family because we are European, so we go to the stadium. Soccer is the number one thing that I bond over with my son. I curse a lot. I curse when I watch games. And so I take him to the stadium when we are in France, in Marseille, right? So when we go to the stadium, he tells me, what goes on the stadium stay in the stadium. So I need curses. He's like with the ultra, like it's crazy. But yes, and that's how he lets it out. It's a very big. He plays as well. It's a big outlet for the emotional display that a lot of it is actually kind of removed for a lot of us at a young age, right? There's such
the
a spectrum.
Hugging, the joy when your teammate gets the goal.
Yeah, the camaraderie, the non-sexual touch, right? You know what I mean? That's not something that you experience a lot in Western cultures, at least outside of sports. And unfortunately, you also have the dark side of team sports, which is when testosterone is growing, and then we have a locker room culture, and which is also very much also more on the US side, I would say. I mean, it exists everywhere, but yeah, that's when also you have that manifestation of it. But it's true that sports, as you were saying, it's also usually tied to identity, because you usually root for your town team,
and you immediately have a community.
I
love the
exactly
the Rangers, and
yes.
you don't, and I hate you for that. And
yes.
Isn't this fun? Oh my gosh, it's so fascinating. But you're right that there's a flip side to it that's very dark. And for instance, in the school system my kids grew up in, if you had a boy and he wasn't a sports person, he could be bullied.
Of course.
Terrible.
I mean,
that's a whole other thing. All right, let's rein. Gosh, I could talk to you for hours. 10 more minutes, please, if you don't mind. tell us, given the challenges, and everyone, you're hearing it, it's layer upon layer upon layer. It's conscious, it's unconscious, it's by design, it's, what's the word?
Culturally,
Organic,
yes,
culture,
yeah,
institutional, societal,
yeah.
individual. Holy crow. So where do we begin? And who do I want this audience to be? I want it to be both women and men. Like when I had these revelations, like, oh, that's what sports is about for so many. I mean, there's much more compassion. And we were talking about empathy. And I think compassion and empathy are different. Compassion is,
Hmm.
wow, I feel what I can see what you're going through. I'm talking about empathy, that somehow it's in my cells what you're experiencing. And I think when we have that, like the quick story that I wanted to share with you about a girl who was working for me, and we found out she was living in her car. I didn't know it. And her car got impounded. And she
Oh
called
wow.
me. I will never forget this, Ludo. This was one of the most pivotal moments. 20 years ago, she called me and said, I didn't admit to you. I was living in my car and it's impounded and they won't let me in to the car. And it's everything I own.
Wow.
I can't say it without crying. I show up, and she happened to be a white person, but something about her made people look down on her. And I watched the owner of the auto shop talking to her, and he didn't see me talking to her. And he was talking to her like she was garbage. I walk up. I don't know how to describe it. He was completely different with me. And I was kind, but I said, we need to get into the car. May I have the keys? He freaking handed the keys over. And all I can tell you was my whole world unraveled. I called my mother. I cried because for literally the first time, I mean, this is privilege. I felt what she felt to be her and how people look at her and talk to her. Does this make sense? Is this
Yeah, I mean,
relevant in any way?
empathy is absolutely a critical skill to develop. It's a skill. It's not. We have some degrees of it, I believe, innate, but it's very much a muscle, I would say, that you need to
Do
exercise.
we need this? Is this part of this journey?
It is a critical part of the journey. If you do not, we have to see the humanity in each other, and that's what
Yes.
the man box culture, as for example, prevented men to do historically with women, which is do not take an active interest in the experiences of women or girls because they are essentially the property of men already. So
Is that where
so
it comes from?
I believe he was. I think there is some version of that. I mean, there is a reason why women and men were treated differently and still are. There's a reason
That you're
why,
my
especially.
property? You're
I
less
think
than. I
I
own
think I
you?
think I think I think I think men were socialized to think like that. Absolutely.
Well,
I
I
think
know
I
this to
think
be
it
true.
is.
Why am I acting so shocked? I'm watching this
But
show
but
about
saying it
Vikings.
but
I
saying
mean,
it
they
out
took.
loud, it's saying it out loud is crazy to say. But think
Do
about
you
the
think
fact
the
that,
vestige of that is still there
I mean, in the
among?
United States we are going backward. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but we are going backwards. It's harder for a woman to have control over their own body in certain. Do you watch Handmaid's Tale, Ketsy?
Oh my gosh, I have.
Okay, okay. So that is to me a fair warning. If you are,
Oh no, Handmaid's Tale people.
yes, if you look at it on with cold critical eye and you see the world the way it's going, it's fair to assume that we need to be very vigilant in taking
Oh, what a stark
things
view,
for
Ludo.
taking things for granted as it comes to democracy and equity and women having agency over their own reproductive organs. That's what we're
Not
talking
and
about, man.
not only, I mean, it's going in the wrong direction for every group that isn't white male. I'm sorry. Would
Yeah,
you
and
agree?
it, and it's and it's consequential. And you know how, especially when you see how the Supreme Court's work in the United States, and this is not This is not changing in every election cycle. So this is why this is important to keep that front and center. A lot of people tend to think, oh, but our children know, they are aware, they don't see color or whatever that means, but we have to be, it's something that we need to work on, something that we need to be very vigilant.
That's a chilling statement, but ever so true. All right. In the remaining time, I don't want to have overwhelmed you all, people, but this is the depth of the issue. It doesn't help us to, sometimes I read about leadership and I just want to spit because it's so superficial.
Yes.
We're not talking anything superficial here. So tell us some things both men and women can do. It takes, and all gender identities. What can we do here?
I would say first, look inward.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is it's very important to take an introspective journey and an intentional one if anyone wants to make any type of progress as it comes to being a better partner from a gender lens or anything.
And a better human.
Exactly. And we have to examine our most ingrained beliefs, which is not easy, what you were describing with your dads. And and it's hard because because we are attached to those things, so that's critical. And I would
Can I say something about that to help people, Ludo? See what you think?
Yes.
I was with a friend, Adine Byrne, I mentioned this before, who is supporting the rights of Indigenous people and in atrocity prevention. Suffice it to say, our dinner was so eye-opening to me about things I'm thinking and doing that are just wrong. This is what I want to say to people. Try to do it in a way that you don't further heap shame on yourself. We humans carry so much shame and humiliation. You're going to have to love yourself if you want to do this. And sometimes we need therapy. Sometimes we need a support group, but don't sabotage yourself by being so ashamed that you can't push through it. That's all I would say. Would you agree to that?
I would 100% agree to that. And it's also because this journey is so long and ongoing with no destination. You better be a good friend to yourself because you're gonna have a very hard time with it. And one of the aspect of sort of looking inward is also to take an active interest in the experiences of others that look different than us. If you do not do some version of that, if you do not take an active interest of the experiences of women, not only the women in your life, because other women are also human beings, and if you only question, if your empathy sphere goes that far, question why it goes that far. So those are also very important elements because we tend to stay in echo chambers a lot, especially with
echo chambers.
Yes.
Is that because the people 1 degree from us are probably pretty similar to us and they feel safe? They're not challenging. Is that
It's not necessarily that. I think part of it is algorithm on social media, and then also the idea of having discussion with the opposite point of view is unfortunately not conducive of encourage and also conducive in civility, because this does not trend. Nuanced conversation do not trend, unfortunately.
Nuanced conversations?
Yes.
Yeah, they're boring. They're not enraged
well
enough.
They are not,
I don't mean they're boring. I mean the algorithm.
Yes, exactly.
In media, we used to say what bleeds reads.
Exactly.
Why do you think the news is all about murder and hurricanes and the elections?
And also because polarized conversation helps the status quo. If you push for and that's also...
That's a tweetable. Oh, not a tweetable. Put it on LinkedIn, somewhere else. What? Say that again. Say it again. Polarized conversation.
I say polarized conversations serve the status quo. Yeah.
Damn it. So much you have to say. There's one other thing you say in our Forbes piece. Can we leave with that?
Yes.
You also said And I think this goes to the heart of good people. And we're talking about good people here. We're not talking about, it's a very small percentage of demons that are, I think, but we're flawed. You mentioned that people are men, women, we're afraid to say the wrong thing. And I know I'll raise my hand. I don't want to use the wrong terminology. I don't want to offend, but I push myself, and boy, am I corrected when I got it wrong.
Yeah.
Can you talk just a little bit about that to
Of
help
course.
good meaning people get over that fear, or what to do? Tell us what to do.
Well, the fear component is a barrier that exists across genders, but it for men specifically, and the fear of saying the wrong things or doing it the wrong way. A lot of the things is a lot of the time it's rooted in this cancel culture environment that we live in, which is, oh my goodness,
I'm going to
people
be out
are
of a job if I say
exactly.
this.
I mean, and it's also you want to be encouraged to take risk and be in conversation, but the inclusion conversation is very jargonic. There's a lot of, and I think we need to not to dumb it down, but to keep it simple. As I was telling you before, when we say, for example, without involving the majority, we cannot make progress. That's easy to understand. This is not a polarized.
I don't need a PhD
exactly.
for that.
This is not a polarized statement, but that fear component, we as D&I practitioner, we have to also mitigate that by being inviting in our conversation, by making sure that what you were saying before, Katy, how we inclusive of men when we engage them in those spaces? Are those questions framed in a way that they are not, identified as the core source of the issue? Because, for example, I would give you one piece of stat, which I think your audience would appreciate, especially because a lot of men have had a bad rap for the past 5 years, especially. But 86% of men, 86% of men, this is Catalyst research, said that they feel committed to interrupting sexism in the workplace. So there is really, they really want to do it. When we measure the confidence, it dropped to 31%.
That they can do it or they will do it.
The confidence that they can do it. And the difference between the two is when you have organizational culture that are in the silent side. Exactly. So what I'm trying to say here is this: individual agency alone is not different. Men want to be part of the solution. As you said, the vast majority of men do, but the culture is often not the way it should be to help them feel confident in doing so. And this is where leaders, especially men, have to role model the inclusive behavior that they want to see in workplaces, that they take their paternity leave when it's available, that they publicly, that role modeling aspect is critical from a men perspective. Because as you were saying before, the messenger matters as much as the message, right?
And we believe what we see.
Yes, exactly.
We're not going to believe it and put ourselves in, scary, uncharted waters if no one else is doing it. I've always said you can't turn the Titanic around yourself.
Yeah.
You can't.
That's true.
But if you're seeing leaders doing their best, and I would say too, yes, we're all afraid of saying the wrong thing, but I think if you're coming from a place of your heart, help me understand where I'm getting this wrong.
Yes.
I don't think you're going to be canceled as instantly.
It's very true.
Right.
It's very true. What you just said is critical. It's also, so there is intention and there is also, how can I say that? It's not supposed to be comfortable. I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to wear this allyship badge on me, and now I'm done, right?
Here we go.
I'm part of the good guys, right? And it's not like that. And that's why we also in MARC we talk about advocacy, because allyship is really about when you're an ally, you're always an ally through something, which is also it's necessary. So you're an ally to women as a man, you're an ally to LGBTQ plus as a straight, and advocacy is different. Advocacy is really proactively looking for opportunities, to create greater equity, which is another set of creating, those dialogues, those chances to change the culture. So that's also, I think, an important part of creating change.
I've just thought of something. My 7 power gaps, the flip side are 7 brave pathways to whatever you want, career bliss. But brave sight, seeing yourself bravely, brave speak, brave ask, brave connection, brave challenge, brave service, brave healing. That could be your framework that you can use to be an advocate.
Yes.
It's lovely that you have nice
courage
ideas.
Is absolutely,
wow.
It cannot be done without courage, especially as a man, because as I was saying before, society is set up in a way that it's everything is telling us not to do this. So with courage and being brave is absolutely critical.
Wow. On that note, Ludo, oh my gosh, I could talk to you for hours. I'm going to go visit you in New York. Where can we learn all about your work? Where do we soak it up? Where do we read it? Tell us where to go.
So I would encourage people to go to catalyst.org/MARC, where they can learn about the MARC program, the way we are structured, the programs that we have, and the movement part of it. You can also follow us on MARC by Catalyst on LinkedIn. And you can also find me on LinkedIn on Ludo Gabriele, if you want to connect with me.
What about your platform?
I have workdaddy.com as well. So this is a platform that I keep open, but I am not your writer. So you understand, right now I'm in a phase where I am taking the time to be quiet a little bit, because it's yes, but I've been writing on the Catalyst website on a few pieces, but I do feel that there's been a lot of movements in the past 5 years. I also feel that my thinking of nuance, I've matured in many ways, especially the past 4 years gave me so much. I talk to so many people, right? In my work, I've seen the flip side of so many situations that people would think about that.
And also being a dad.
Yeah,
being a parent changes everything.
That and being a parent of a boy and a girl, that's what I tell everyone. I started this journey for my daughter, and I am continuing for my son, because I will tell you this: I am much more certain of how I'm going to take steps for my daughter, but with my son, it's going to take
even
more
you
work.
who are
yes,
a deep
absolutely
researcher in this. Ludo, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Katie. I appreciate the time. It was a pleasure talking to you.
So fun. Everybody, I hope you listen to this. I hope you listen to it again. I hope you look at it on YouTube. I hope you share it with everybody you know. I hope you pour over Catalyst, MARC work, MARC, and we would love to hear from you. And I say this every time, but if we're not spurring questions or challenges, what are we doing here? We want to hear from you. Please ask us. If you have a question for Ludo, on LinkedIn would be a great place to post this. Repost it and say, listen, I got a question. Yes. We would just so appreciate hearing from you, because it's in conversation that moves us forward. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful, wonderful few weeks, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Thank you again, Ludo. Hi, everyone. Kathy here. Do you run a coaching business that focuses on supporting women? If so, I've got some news. Right now, we're opening the enrollment of my coach training program called the Amazing Career Coach Certification, which is a 17-week hands-on training program that certifies female coaches in my proprietary 16-step career growth model, which is perfect for coaches who want a deeper dive into powerful, proven coaching frameworks, concepts, and skills that will help you become far more effective in working with women. And through the program, you'll get access to a powerful small business acceleration program called the Rapid Growth Academy, delivered by my friend and colleague, award-winning business growth expert, Matthew Pollard. Through Matthew's program, you'll be taught essential business and sales growth information that will help you grow your business success in the quickest way possible. In my view, there's nothing on the market like this for coaches because it targets the two critical aspects of success: how you support your clients to thrive, and just as importantly, how to grow your own business to the next level. For more information, visit certification.amazingcareerproject.com and check out the details. Thanks so much for joining us today. And please don't forget to check out findingbrave.org for more programs, resources, and tips. And tune in next time for your weekly dose of Finding Brave.